We've all been there. You're at school, trying to strike up a conversation with someone, and when the moment of truth arrives, your voice just freezes. Your heart races, your palms sweat, and the best you can manage is a stuttered hi. Well, that universal feeling is the very heart of Komi Can't Communicate. But there's a brilliant twist here. The person who can't speak isn't the awkward nerd at the back of the classroom. It's Komi, the most beautiful and admired girl in school. Everyone treats her like a goddess, but nobody realizes that behind that elegant gaze hides a girl with severe social anxiety, unable to utter a single word. And that's where Tadano comes in. The most average guy in the world, he discovers her secret and takes on a mission to help Komi make 100 friends. The result is an anime that blends laugh-out-loud comedy with moments that tug at your heartstrings in the best way possible. That's why today on the channel, Komi Can't Communicate, the goddess who couldn't speak, and the friendship that changed everything. We meet Tadano Hitohito, a useless teenager with the impressive ambition of being an absolute nobody on his first day at Itan High. His grand life plan is to blend in with the crowd and avoid any kind of trouble for reasons nobody cares about. But his strategy of being a total loser goes out the window the exact second he sits at the desk next to Komi Shoko, a supreme goddess who could make any guy drool. Thanks to her intimidating posture and unreal beauty, she automatically becomes the school's untouchable idol, while our pathetic protagonist becomes public enemy number one just for breathing the same oxygen as her. By pure fate and terrible school management, Tadano ends up completely alone in the classroom with the perfect girl. But when he tries to open his mouth to socialize, the girl almost flees in despair like she's seen a ghost. That's when the kid's big brain processes the info, and he realizes she isn't an arrogant ice queen. Actually, she just has such crippling social anxiety that she swallows her own voice and is physically incapable of verbally communicating with any living being. Seeing the damsel in distress and wanting to play the hero, Tadano points to the chalkboard. She grabs the chalk and starts furiously scribbling on the board, revealing that she wants to speak normally, but her anxiety blocks her throat. After a silent vent, she apologizes for wasting a nobody's precious time and tries to bail. But Tadano decides to take matters into his own hands, grabs a piece of hard white chalk, and lets his creative juices flow into words on the board, giving her the first real conversation of her entire life. The chalk goddess confesses her deep, intimate desire to make 100 friends. Tadano wastes no time, declares he's number one on the list, and promises to help catch the other 99, leaving Komi completely touched by the bold proposal. The next morning, the useless protagonist is already plotting a strategy in his head, but the omniscient narration bursts his bubble. This damn school's entrance exam was entirely based on a personality interview. That means the high school has zero normal people, basically acting as a zoo packed with weirdos, delinquents, loners, and unsalvageable degenerates. Just like you, the mission to hunt down 99 normal friends for the mute goddess is going to be a literal descent into hell. After failing miserably to introduce his new mute goddess to a single ordinary human in class, Tadano realizes he needs to appeal to a higher power. He reluctantly drags the girl to Najimi Osana, his childhood friend of totally ambiguous gender and chaotic intentions. Thanks to their god-tier communication skills and a track record of switching schools more times than a wanted fugitive, Najimi is magically childhood friends with absolutely everyone on the face of the earth. In theory, they'd be the perfect person to interact with Komi. However, Najimi drops a depression bomb right in the protagonist's lap. Years ago, the creature tried to befriend the goddess and got ghosted so colossally that the shock of the failure left lasting damage. Najimi was left with massive trauma and can't even look Komi straight in the face to this day. But Tadano ignores the pathetic whining, pushes the issue, and forces Najimi to walk the perfect girl home at the end of the day. Like a good obsessed psychopath, Tadano tails the two from afar through the streets and notices that even the supreme deity of communication is sweating bullets trying to get a single word out of the mute goddess. Out of nowhere, a generic delinquent named Ma spawns on the street and confesses his burning love for Najimi. In a clever attempt to avoid trouble, Najimi claims to have turned back into a guy just to turn the suitor down, but Ma isn't fazed and continues making unwanted advances. Seeing the uncomfortable situation unfold in broad daylight, Komi decides to step in and tries to talk to Ma, but all that comes out of her mouth is a bizarre stutter, accompanied by a dead, unblinking death stare. Ma instantly shits his pants, convinced he just bumped into a sadistic serial killer, and runs for his life. With this violent miracle, Najimi finally connects the dots, understands understands the extreme social anxiety and decides to take up friendship slot number 2. The next day, Najimi sits down to eat lunch with the duo, drawing every eye in school and destroying whatever was left of Tadano's non-existent reputation. When the protagonist explains the insane 100 Friends mission, Najimi decides to put the girl through some shock therapy. As a trial by fire, they send Komi to order an overly complicated coffee all by herself at the cafe counter. Komi gulps, suffers in silence, and tries multiple times, but ends up coming back with the completely wrong cup in hand. To make the humiliation worse, the chaotic creature known as Najimi admits they forgot the damn original order anyway, making the goddess cry in frustration over her shameful defeat.
Wait to drink it, huh? I didn't order this.
Tadano and Najimi drop to their knees to beg forgiveness for the psychological torture, but deep down, they're both enjoying every second of it, finding her angry little pout the most incredibly cute thing in this sick world. While our goddess with chronic social anxiety continues her journey to hoard 100 friends, the ambiguously gendered creature named Najimi decides to push a new guinea pig to the slaughter. The victim of the hour is Agari Himiko, a girl who suffers from so much social panic that sweating cold bullets is her natural state. Feeling a spiritual connection, Komi tries to approach her, but her brain short-circuits, and she just stares at the girl in absolute silence. Subjected to this psychological terror, Agari gets so intimidated that she actually manages to make an announcement to the whole class just to escape Komi's overwhelming presence. But in a bout of Stockholm Syndrome, Agari thanks her for the scare, and when the useless Tadano suggests a friendship, she declares she's unworthy of such an honor and swears to become Komi's pet dog. Ignoring the voluntary humiliation, she becomes official friend number 3. Flaunting her brand new first cell phone, Komi is determined to collect contacts like a boomer on Facebook. Tadano tells her to ask for Najimi and Agari's numbers. Getting Najimi's is a breeze, but Agari's bizarre canine submission routine makes Komi utterly uncomfortable. Najimi has to step in to explain the situation to the little doggy, who rushes to apologize and hand over her number, but ends up blurting out that Komi actually wanted Tadano's number first. Face-palming at his own cluelessness, the awkward protagonist hands over his contact info in a nuclear-level atmosphere of sheer embarrassment. Since democracy in this school is a joke, the class elects Komi as president against her own will. Sensing the despair radiating off the girl, Najimi intervenes and manipulates the mob of simps into electing Komi as the classroom goddess. The president gig falls straight to Tadano, who now has to do all the slave labor while Najimi snags the VP title. Fiddling with her new phone like a confused boomer, Komi accidentally butt dials Tadano. She tries to pretend the call dropped, but a miracle happens, and she actually manages to form real words over the phone. The two of them are so proud of this pathetic achievement that it's almost pitiful. To cap off the day with some public humiliation, Najimi starts playing stupid games with the class normies. Seeing Komi feel left out, the manipulative creature drags her and Tadano into the circle with the sole objective of forcing Komi to speak. In the bizarre games invented by Najimi, absolutely every NPC in the class loses on purpose just to let the goddess win, proving that the herd always obeys. Tadano, however, ends up brutally sabotaging himself just to save Komi from a cringe-worthy moment, throwing his own reputation in the trash and making himself even more hated. But when Komi says she had fun, he realizes that being the class doormat was actually worth it. The day of the physical exams arrives, and a try-hard freshman named Yada no Makiru decides her life's ultimate goal is to defeat Komi. Consumed by envy over someone else's popularity, Yada no goes into combat mode, but our silent goddess wins the first 2 rounds without breaking a sweat, flexing her perfect vision and superior height. In a pathetic twist, the angry shorty manages to score higher in weight and sitting height, only to realize she just proved to the whole school that she's heavier and has short legs. Refusing to accept total humiliation, she declares an imaginary tie and runs away, while the useless Tadano manages the feat of getting absolutely average scores in every possible category, proving he is the living definition of a background character. But the real danger lurks on the way to school. The bland protagonist is suddenly kidnapped by Yamai Ren, the leader of the popular clique who hides a level of psychopathic obsession for Komi that would make any yandere jealous. While Tadano lies tied up and gagged in this psycho's room like a piece of meat about to be discarded, Yamai goes to school and intimidates Najimi into getting a formal introduction to the goddess. The plan goes down the drain because Komi panics and can't let out a single peep. Smelling a crime in the air due to Tadano's absence, Najimi invites everyone to pay a surprise visit to the psycho's house. With a maniacal smile on her face, Yamai accepts the visit, while silently threatening to murder Tadano and bury his body in the mountains if he makes a sound. The whole act crumbles when Najimi opens the closet and finds the bagged-up protagonist inside.
He goes right for it anyway.
Ugh.
Forced to confess to her federal crime, Yamai tries to justify the kidnapping by claiming she'd be a much better friend than him. To the kidnapper's absolute surprise, Komi rejects the proposal, making it clear that she alone decides who gets on the VIP list of her life. The next day, guilt consumes our girl with communication issues. She even goes as far as speaking out loud to Tadano, demanding that he stop being her friend so he doesn't end up sliced to pieces in a basement. But the protagonist finally grows a spine and declares that he is the one who decides to be her best friend, completely ignoring the imminent risk of death. To top off the circus, Najimi drags the kidnapper back to give an apology that makes absolutely no sense. Komi, in a bout of questionable mercy, decides to reveal her secret of social anxiety to the criminal. Shocked to discover the truth, Yamai simply concludes that being mute makes Komi even more irresistible, and promises to help hunt down the other friends. After hesitating in the face of sheer madness, Komi accepts the deal, and the obsessed psycho officially becomes friend number 4, proving that this girl's standards for friendship are completely ruined. The summer heat hits the school, and our goddess of anxiety decides to wear the summer uniform, turning the high school's hormonal teenagers into drooling primates ready to worship a lamppost just because she leaned on it. Our perfectly useless protagonist is the only one with 2 functioning brain cells, trying not to act like an animal in heat, until he finally processes just how unbelievably attractive she looks and melts internally into a sweaty panic. Meanwhile, the hyper-competitive Yadano tries to prove her superiority in the physical fitness tests, but gets absolutely obliterated in every category because sheer willpower can't beat pure genetic majesty. During the 50-meter dash, she looks over and realizes Komi is literally a moving Renaissance painting. Accepting defeat, she offers a handshake, but the mental block strikes, and Komi freezes like Windows 98. Yadano freaks out over being left hanging, declares eternal rivalry, and automatically becomes friend number 5. Riding the social momentum, the entity of dubious gender, known as Najimi, invites the squad to raid Komi's house, a territory previously untouched by humanity. There, they meet the protagonist's mom, an absurdly extroverted woman who clearly sucked up all the communication skills her daughter lacks, and proceeds to humiliate the poor girl in front of everyone. Najimi, being a manipulative pest, locks Komi and Tadano in her room, fully expecting them to finally start mating or at least awkwardly flirt, but their sexual tension is about as non-existent as Tadano's courage. Frustrated, Najimi ransacks the poor girl's drawers and takes pictures of old photo albums for future blackmail. Hunger strikes, and Agari drags everyone to a hardcore ramen joint that looks more like a secret carbohydrate cult. Tadano and Najimi fail miserably at all the unspoken rules of etiquette, looking like 2 idiots chewing on rubber. But Komi, without uttering a single word, accidentally executes all the sacred tasting rituals perfectly. The chef nearly bawls his eyes out, thinking she's a culinary master savoring his thick broth, while the poor girl is just in absolute panic, thinking she broke a rule.
I think she did something wrong and hurries out.
To fill the class's weirdo quota, an eye-patch-wearing Chunabu named Nakanaka barges into the room, swearing Komi is Princess Komelia from a past life. The pure cringe juice hits so hard that Nakanaka flees as soon as she realizes her own secondhand embarrassment. Najimi uses this excuse to expose our generic protagonist's dark past. In middle school, Tadano was an insufferable edgelord who confessed his love to a girl thinking he was Batman, and got dumped so brutally that he reprogrammed his own brain to be the most boring person in the universe for the rest of his life. Later, during PE class, Nakanaka is completely isolated because the rest of the class is too busy fighting for the right to breathe Komi's oxygen. The mute goddess takes pity on the weirdo and pairs up with her, forcing Nakanaka to completely shatter from embarrassment and officially converting her into friend number 6. The rain pours down on the city, and Najimi steals Tadano's umbrella, dashing off like a speed demon. Komi mysteriously shows up with hers and lets the boy under the fabric, reinforcing the highest level of intimacy they've ever had. They walk together while Tadano sacrifices his own shoulder to the rain just to keep his deity dry, only to realize halfway through that the girl read Najimi's note and had planned this romantic walk from the very beginning, making his NPC heart leap straight through his esophagus. The school's untouchable goddess decides it's time to become a stand-up comedian after seeing on TV that jokes attract people. She writes down puns worthy of a sweaty boomer uncle on a piece of paper and hands them to her subjects, but her comedic timing is effectively a train wreck. Najimi forces Tadano to give a practical example of humor, and the mediocre boy spits out the most depressing dad joke ever conceived by mankind. Surprisingly, Komi thinks it's absolute genius, proving that their combined intellectual capacity for comedy could fit in a teaspoon. Shortly after, we find out the most adored girl in school has never set foot in a clothing store. The misfit group invades the mall to dress up the protagonist, secretly being tracked by the resident pet psychopath Yamai, who is practically drooling in the corners spying on their every move. The outfit choices are a disaster. Najimi picks a flashy yukata just to troll, Yamai selects pieces that cost the GDP of a small country, and Agari suggests clothes that would make a farmer look stylish. Ultimately, the bland protagonist saves the day, pulling a flawless white dress out of thin air. The piece turns Komi into an untouchable angel, and she buys it on the spot, validating Tadano's accidental husband instincts. Strutting in her new outfit, Komi hits the hair salon for a trim. The owner somehow deciphers her silences like a mind reader, but the new employee falls into deep despair, thinking the girl's muteness is a lethal critique of her scalp massage skills. When Komi finally gathers enough life force to mumble a thank you on her way out, the employee's soul nearly leaves her body from sheer relief. The next day at school, absolutely nobody besides the faithful little dog Tadano notices she trimmed her hair by 2 millimeters, proving he spends all day staring at every inch of the girl. Night falls, and our protagonist's broken brain decides to torture her, pulling up a 4K compilation of all the social blunders she committed that day to hold her sleep hostage. She rolls around in a cold sweat, but finally passes out when she decides to focus on memories of her generic protagonist saving her from choking in public. The piece is short-lived as exam week hits everyone like a truck. Najimi begs for a study group in the library, solely to use the others as meat shields for responsibility. The room is heavily guarded by Gorimi, a muscular dictator who smacks anyone breathing too loudly with a giant paper fan, enforcing the unbreakable 3 strikes rule. Najimi's hyperactivity ruins everything in record time, earning violent whacks for everyone for reading manga, laughing at terrible jokes, and even building a Jenga tower in the middle of the sacred desk.
What are you doing?
Now it's your turn, Todd.
After being tossed onto the curb, Komi whispers a confession that she actually hates studying too, shattering her image as a divine honor student. The results come out, proving genetics are pure BS. Komi gets grades worthy of a supercomputer, Najimi scores high without touching a single book, and Tadano hits the most uselessly mediocre average possible, reaffirming his lukewarm existence, while Yada no foams at the mouth after being academically crushed by the goddess once again. Summer break finally arrives, bringing the depressing weight of loneliness, since both Komi and Tadano are too cowardly to use a phone and ask each other out. Salvation comes through the hyperactive pest Najimi, who solves the dead end by dragging them to a pool to drown their sorrows, where Komi finally expends enough saliva to speak directly to Najimi for the very first time. Our squad of unemployed weirdos decides to drag their insecurities to a water park, with Najimi bringing Agari into the mix. Obviously, the local psychopath named Yamai mysteriously discovers their plans and crashes the hangout with her popular clique just to satisfy her most primal urges. In the locker room, Yamai practically salivates at the chance to see her goddess in a swimsuit, but suffers a full-blown meltdown when she realizes the girl brought a school swimsuit so bland it's practically radioactive, forcing the stalker to go buy a bikini and make the girl wear it. The group runs around frantically until Komi trips and scrapes her knee, triggering world-ending levels of drama. Unable to get into the water so she doesn't mix her vital fluids into the pool, she sits completely isolated, guarding the bags like an abandoned puppy, thoroughly convinced she ruined everyone's fun and that they all hate her. Exactly how you hate your life on a Monday morning. Tadano goes to keep her company, and in an attempt to do emotional damage control, drags the girl to a shallow puddle where her bandage won't get wet. The problem hits when he realizes he just held her hand, sending him into an absolute moral panic, shaking like a virgin making female contact for the first time. The tension breaks when Najimi saves the day by mowing everyone down with a water gun. In the end, Yamai's background NPCs, Chiarai Shigeo, Sonoda Taisei, Shinobino Mono, Onigashima Akako, and Kishi Himeko formally accept being Komi's friends, bumping her friendship score up to 11. On another occasion, the girl visits the library, escorted by her dad Masayoshi. They grab some shaved ice to eat together, sharing a profound bonding moment composed of two mute people staring at each other in deadly silence, ending only when he gives his daughter an affectionate head pat. Inside the library, Komi is too terrified to simply check out a book, so she decides to just read it right there. Her death glare traumatizes a random baby, but she does damage control by popping a fake smile so terrifyingly creepy that it bizarrely soothes the child. Meanwhile, hiding in the shadows, Tadano watches the entire scene drooling with admiration and completely forgets to return his own books. The cringe tour continues in an empty park where the girl goes to play alone. She leans in to sip water from a public fountain, and guess who's walking by? Tadano watches her gulp the liquid, utterly mesmerized. And guess what? He forgets his damn books at the library for the second time. The Oban holiday arrives just to prove that a lack of social skills is deeply genetic, as the whole family goes to visit Uncle Sadayoshi. After visiting the ancestral graves, we meet cousin Akira, who is absolutely terrified of our protagonist. To break the ice, the girl lunges forward and aggressively tickle attacks the kid, making Akira cry tears of joy and admit she previously thought her cousin was just a sleep paralysis demon staring at her. Right after, Grandma Yuiko calls her granddaughter in for an interrogation, hyping up the fact that the girl finally made friends. But the old lady absolutely nukes the vibe 3 seconds later by asking about boys, swiping her granddaughter's phone, spotting Tadano's name, and instantly banning this impure relationship, while the girl spirals into a panic attack.
Let me see your phone. Who's this Hito Tadano guy?
Back in the city, the social parasite Najimi summons them to a summer festival, dragging along literally 1,000 people in yukatas. Komi falls into deep despair because she forgot her trusty notebook, and Tadano tries to play the white knight of the night only to fail miserably and endure indescribable embarrassment. Defying all known laws of physics, the girl actually manages to open her mouth and compliment his outfit, instantly curing his anxiety. She then morphs into an unstoppable try-hard gamer, destroying Yada No in a shooting game, winning a console in a rigged scam game, and massacring Nakanaka at goldfish scooping. At the end of the night, she and Tadano isolate themselves from the group. The girl grabs a stick and writes in the dirt that she loved being alone with him, but wipes the declaration at the speed of light before the boy's smooth brain can even process the information. Summer is dying, so Najimi drags Komi and Yamai to break into Tadano's house. His sister, Hitomi, suffers an existential crisis upon seeing that her loser brother actually has female friends in real life. Najimi then reveals the master plan, siphoning off everyone else's homework because they did absolutely zero work over the break. They refuse to let the parasite plagiarize everything, forcing a torturous study session. Hours later, everyone reminisces about their summer misadventures, pulling an emotional trigger inside the protagonist, who starts compulsively crying because she doesn't want the fun to genuinely end, which inevitably sets off Najimi to cry too in a completely ridiculous melodrama festival. The new semester drops after the break, and a useless country bumpkin named Inaka is more depressed than you on a Monday, terrified of her own rural accent while aggressively idolizing Komi as if she were the untouchable queen of New York. When Najimi decides to order an absurdly convoluted sandwich at a cheap Subway knockoff, the hillbilly tails Komi to the shop to learn how to be a city girl, entirely unaware that Tadano is also stealthily tailing the protagonist from the shadows. Komi tries to order, but the social panic hits so hard she just straight up runs out of the store, which the bumpkin misinterprets as an advanced urban strategy to assert dominance over the cashier. On the second run, Komi points at the bread but freezes completely when the worker asks for veggies, resulting in a dry, depressing bun. However, this is more than enough to inspire the farm girl to order her own sub, while Najimi is forced to apologize for making the mute girl cry. Later, the eye patch girl Nakanaka invites Komi over to her place, but the vibe gets so brutally awkward she just decides to play a single-player game while Komi watches in dead silence. Pretty much the the dictionary definition of psychological torture. Desperate and convinced she's getting rejected, Nakanaka summons Najimi and Tadano over to play a blatant Smash Bros. Ripoff. While Tadano teaches Komi how to handle the controller's stick, Nakanaka decides she must absolutely obliterate Najimi to impress her goddess, having taken humiliating beatdowns in the game since childhood. The miracle occurs when Komi accidentally casts a debuff on Najimi's character, finally allowing the eye patch edgelord to taste sweet victory. On their day off, Najimi enslaves the duo into handing out pocket tissues on the street, forcing Tadano to sweat literal gallons inside a giant polar bear mascot suit. Komi completely locks up until a frantic corporate office worker violently snatches a packet out of her hand, filling the girl with enough confidence to aggressively distribute the rest with the unhinged assistance of Yamai the psychopath. The next morning, Tadano shows up with a highly suspicious white seed stuck to his cheek. Komi is so incredibly useless that she'd rather question her own sanity and have literal nightmares about the entire classroom rocking the same face booger than just tell the boy about it. After spending the entire day staring at his seed, Komi realizes Tadano refers to Najimi by their first name and gets overwhelmingly jealous, wanting that level of intimacy for herself. But when she tries to ask him to say her name, and even Najimi purposely baits them by using the protagonist's first name, their virginity levels hit the absolute roof, and neither of them can say a word before Najimi finally points out the sesame seed on Tadano's face that the whole universe was purposely ignoring. The school sports festival arrives to prove that teenagers running around in the sun is a terrible idea, and Komi and Tadano run into Netsuno-chika, an arrogant upperclassman with a weird obsession with taking other people's temperatures.
Huh? Nice fever you got there, Najmi. Your class's temperature? 41 degrees. That's what I'm talking about.
She insults our protagonist by calling her cold-blooded, making the entire class boil with rage and prompting the psychopath Yamai to plot some premeditated manslaughter, even though our two main dorks couldn't care less. During the synchronized warm-up, the vice principal simply loses her mind over Komi's pose and hands her class a free win, proving that favoritism is absolute. In the tug-of-war, the class's simps are so weak that some pass out just from sensing the protagonist's presence and lose their grip, making everyone eat dirt and lose miserably. In the relay race, the dog girl runs out of breath, the eye patch emo trips over her own feet, and Tadano hits the deck completely dizzy. But when Najimi forces Komi to cheer him on, the protagonist hears a whisper that miraculously injects pure testosterone into his veins, making him run like a wild animal, only to secure a pathetic third place. The weather tries to ruin everything with a thunderstorm, but Komi's extroverted mom shows up on the field. When she says how proud she is that her daughter has so many cult followers, the rain literally disappears through sheer power of the plot. In the final race, Komi goes head-to-head against the thermometer upperclassman. She manages to keep pace until she slips and face plants into the dirt, but after hearing the desperate screams of her flock, she gets up and finishes the race, letting the upperclassman take first place. As expected, the entire class ignores the winner to simp over the fallen Komi, which somehow softens the upperclassman's heart. She apologizes for being a jerk, leaving the silent girls' class in second place overall in the tournament. Later on, Komi suffers a jealousy attack upon seeing her beloved Tadano walking down the halls with another girl. The guy is swamped with class president duties, so the new girl named Onamine offers to do the heavy lifting while punishing Najimi. When Komi tries to help and gets turned down by both of them, her envy reaches radioactive levels. While walking, Onamine asks if Tadano is some kind of submissive masochist who likes getting walked all over, assuming Komi is a tyrannical dictator bossing her slaves around. He defends the girl, but when Onamine tries to talk to the silent girl, who is spying on them like a professional stalker, she runs away. That evening, the scene repeats itself and Komi returns to try and steal her man back, offering help that Tadano finally accepts. Catching on to the obvious sexual tension in the air, Onemine makes up an excuse to bounce, and the next day she makes peace with the protagonist, becoming the 12th friend on her list. The new girl whispers that she's rooting for them to finally get together, making Komi flee down the stairs out of pure embarrassment while Yamai seethes with rage. The group then decides to take pictures in one of those mall photo booths. Since Komi doesn't have two brain cells to rub together to understand the instructions, she ends up bug-eyed in every single pose, which Najimi finds hilarious, but gets the sicko Yamai completely turned on. In the end, after Tadano wrestles with a claw machine to win a cat keychain, he arrives at school with the prize only to discover that Komi did the exact same thing for him. They swap gifts like two pre-teens sweating with nerves, and Komi gets home rolling around on her bed, side, clutching the cheap plastic as if she'd just won the lottery. The class of primates can't decide on a theme for the cultural festival because everyone just wants to use Komi as a mannequin for their own fetishes. Trying to restore order in the asylum, Tadano uses his generic protagonist intuition and figures out that she actually wants Najimi's maid cafe idea. He blurts this out loud, and the whole class instantly obeys like the disciplined flock of sheep they are.
Huh? Oh.
The class was again united.
During the preparations, the students have Komi sit on a literal throne so she doesn't have to do absolutely anything until Otori, the girl whose brain operates in constant slow motion, decides to kidnap the goddess to fetch supplies. In the storage room, Otori vanishes out of nowhere, nearly giving Komi a nervous breakdown. But when she is finally found, Otori drops a cute moment saying she's always wanted to be her friend. Komi takes the opportunity to vent about feeling useless and like dead weight because of her crippling social anxiety. However, all the emotional weight of the moment is crushed the very next second when Otori decides to caress a monstrous chainsaw for absolutely no reason, proving she is a psychopath in training and agreeing to be friend number 13. The useless trio later goes out to hand out flyers on the street, while Najimi shoves paper in everyone's faces like a spam bot. Komi has the social charisma of a brick wall. Tadano suggests focusing on the shop she already frequents, and they eventually bump into a baby who miraculously smiles at Komi and calls her Coco, earning her some unwarranted teasing from her own friends. On the night before the festival, the girls decide to feed their slaves with rice balls, onigiri. The herd of simps nearly starts a civil war to decide who gets the privilege of swallowing the food Komi molded with her bare hands. The crazy Yamai tries to devour them all by herself, but the dispute is settled with fists and rock, paper, scissors. Tadano ends up grabbing a bizarre cube and shoves the whole thing in his mouth, thinking it was made by Najimi, and praises the taste to high heaven. It turns out Komi was the one who molded that bizarre square, and she practically explodes with joy watching him eat and savor her creation. The festival finally opens, and a smelly otaku, a self-proclaimed maid sommelier, starts analyzing the girls as if he were picking out livestock at an auction. Komi panics, spills water on the guy's lap, and tries to apologize while babbling like an idiot. The moron misinterprets her brain glitch as a cold, goddess-like aura and leaves completely humiliated. Complaining that the skirt of the dress is way too short, Najimi strips the outfit off Komi and forces Tadano to put on the maid costume along with a wig. The result is so terrifyingly good that the boys in the class, and even Komi herself, start feeling some confusing things down below upon seeing Tadano dressed as a woman. The poor guy's family shows up to bury whatever dignity he has left, with his sister snapping a photo to send to their mom. Komi nails the coffin shut by calling him cute, making the situation even more embarrassing than it already was. Embracing cutthroat capitalism, Najimi looks at the sea of drooling simps at the maid cafe and turns the place into a full-blown extortion racket. They start charging an entry fee, fees to play games with the maids, campus walks, and they even charge to slap masochistic customers in the face. They throw Komi out on the street as live bait to herd more cattle to the slaughter, leaving Najimi swimming in filthy lucre until the teachers catch wind of the mafia. Goremi beats the crap out of everyone and forces a full refund, bankrupting the criminal syndicate on the spot. Without missing a beat, Najimi drags Komi and Tadano off to enjoy the festival. They enter a haunted house, where the NPC Odoka spends so much time debating whether or not she should jump out at Komi that the trio just walks right past, leaving the poor girl talking to the walls. Shortly after, the entire school gathers on the rooftop for a freak show of love confessions. The psycho Yamai steals the spotlight and asks Komi to marry her, proving that the local asylum left its gates open. Desperate for marketing, Najimi shoves Komi onto the roof to promote the cafe, but since she has the vocal capacity of a crustacean, she only lets out a tiny squeak. The entire school hears it as a cat's meow and completely loses its collective mind. The fun comes to an end when the meditation club kidnaps Najimi to try and exorcise their filthy sins. Komi uses her free time to tweak her maid outfit, giving it a more mature look that almost gives Tadano a heart attack when he calls her cute again.
You're wearing a cute outfit, Komi.
They spend the rest of the day watching a rock band, with Tadano sweating bullets as he realizes the tension between the two of them is escalating. At the closing ceremony, it's announced in the gym that their class won the festival, but the grand prize is revoked thanks to Najimi's blatant racketeering. They try to throw out a lame, sentimental excuse to save themselves, and Tadano shuts the lie down immediately. However, when Komi repeats the exact same phrase as Najimi, the students agree, crying tears of emotion in an absolute show of hypocrisy. The night transitions into a jazz performance. Komi wants to dance with Tadano, which makes the popular kids practically kill each other trying to steal his spot. Tadano finally gathers his courage and asks her to dance, but since neither of these two dorks knows how to dance a single step, Najimi butts in and turns the scene into a bizarre three-way waltz. At the after-party, the group raids a karaoke joint. Komi goes into severe panic because she accidentally selected a song, and she spends the entire time frozen like a traumatized statue without making a single sound. Even so, the whole room gives her absolute silence, a standing ovation, proving the level of collective delusion, with the exception of Tadano, who quietly observes the insanity. When it's Tadano's turn to sing, the entire room ignores his existence, and the only one who pays any attention to the poor guy is Komi, giving him just enough fuel to keep from crying into the microphone. At the end of the night, Komi jots down the names of all her new friends in a little notebook, and the scene abruptly cuts to a bizarre studio where she announces a second season, verbally thanking everyone who suffers from chronic social anxiety, exactly like you. Winter hits the city hard, and our favorite useless protagonist wakes up only to get knocked out by her own floor while reaching for her phone. A message from Najimi demands she bring a notebook, so the girl throws on a scarf and heads to school just to get assaulted by the freezing hands of a creature of ambiguous gender. In retaliation, she rubs her own freezing hands on Tadano's neck and plays dumb. Next, Najimi breaks the fourth wall to explain the obvious and turns the girl's notebook into Komi's book of friends. A line of weirdos leaves their signatures on the paper, but the joy is short-lived when Najimi calls the protagonist a slowpoke, shattering her fragile feelings. Suddenly, a blonde meathead with the face of a serial killer crashes the classroom. But the truth is, Katai is just another socially anxious loser who bleached his hair and got jacked to fake some confidence. Out of nowhere, he drags Najimi outside, making the whole class think a brutal murder just went down in the hallway, and then comes back to sit right in front of Komi. The two lock into a staring contest fueled by pure psychological terror until Katai's fried brain decides that Komi is a communication master begging for eye contact. Sensing the secondhand embarrassment, Tadano rescues the fake delinquent for a walk, earning the eternal gratitude of a muscle-bound gorilla. The Wonder Trio then decides to crash Nakanaka's house to study for finals, bringing Yamai the psychopath along as a bonus. Najimi plays dumb and passes out on the bed, while Yamai and Nakanaka start fighting over Komi's attention like two rabid dogs, trading heavy insults about being a smelly otaku and a fake preppy. Komi has a meltdown trying to choose between the two, so they decide to settle the tension by playing a cheap Mario Kart clone. Obviously, that menace Najimi rises from the ashes, steals the victory, and declares themselves the ultimate best friend, leaving everyone else completely dumbfounded. On the day of the exam, Komi's motor skills fail her, and her pencil lead breaks. Tadano drops his own pencil on the floor so the teacher can pick up both of them in a low-budget act of heroism. But since this idiot has the memory of a goldfish, he forgets his eraser, forcing Komi to snap hers in half in an ultimate sacrifice. Later, he refuses to lend the chewed-up eraser to his sister, hoarding the dirty piece of rubber as if it were the holy grail of incel romance. An apocalyptic typhoon hits the region, trapping our anxiety goddess at home. When lightning strikes and the power goes out, Komi hides under the covers like a scared animal until her loyal simp, Tadano, calls to check if she survived.
It's pretty loud, isn't it?
Oh, hello, Komi. Are you at home right now?
The psychological terror makes her speak perfectly while begging him not to hang up, all under the bizarre gaze of her own mother, who watches the scene from the other room. As soon as the storm passes, the class's pet psychopath, Yamai, falls into clinical depression because she can't see Komi's panties. In a criminal mastermind-level plan, she drags everyone out to play in the puddles, hoping to see paradise reflected in the mud. The wind even cooperates, but ends up revealing Agari's underwear instead, frustrating the stalker. In an act of pure desperation, desperation, Yamai slides across the ground to take an upskirt shot, but jams the lens straight into the dirt, ending up completely defeated while Komi admires a rainbow like a clueless idiot. Later on, 3 useless background characters start hallucinating about dating the girls in class, while Tadano gets front row seats to the delusion. They imagine Najimi swallowing a white popsicle in an absurdly suggestive way, Agari bouncing her meat mountains at the mall, and Yamai as a rich weirdo demanding things in exchange for earrings. But when it comes to Nakanaka and Inaka, the fantasies bizarrely turn into cute and wholesome fairy tales. The problem is that nobody has enough brain cells to picture a date with Komi, leaving the job to Tadano himself. The idiot hallucinates being married, washing dishes, and brushing shoulders with her at the sink, before smashing his own head against the desk to force these impure thoughts to stop. To make up for her lack of friends, Komi goes to a cat cafe with Onameine and Otori, since Tadano flaked out with a lame excuse about being busy. The felines think the protagonist's dead-eyed stare is a death threat and flee from her, leaving the poor girl rotting in a corner, while Otori becomes the Beastmaster Queen. But the black-furred alpha cat decides to take pity on the girl and sits on her lap. A picture of this miracle is sent to Tadano, who has a meltdown of regret at home. Because misery loves company, Yamai invents the I love you game, a pathetic excuse to try and kiss the ground Komi walks on. The lunatic knocks herself out just fantasizing about the protagonist's voice, and Najimi resorts to forcing Tadano into the game. Under the threat that backing down would mean a real confession, the boy tries to speak, but stutters and explodes from embarrassment mid-sentence, instantly losing the game. While everyone thinks Komi is an emotionless robot, the girl runs out of the room and buries her face in her hands, dying inside because, deep down in her needy heart, she really wanted that loser to finish the damn sentence. Our goddess of chronic social anxiety chokes miserably when it's her turn to read a text out loud, and her official simp, Tadano, serves as a shoulder to cry on to comfort the girl. Watching from afar, the eye patch-wearing goth Chunibyo Nakanaka decides Tadano is a mutant telepath, demanding private mind-reading lessons so she can get closer to Komi. Yamai, the psychopath, smells opportunity and latches onto them, forming the most pathetic stalker trio in school. They spend the whole day spying on Komi, failing humiliatingly to decipher the girl. When Komi tries to help put away the volleyballs but ends up standing there empty-handed, the two idiots think she's lazy, but Tadano clarifies that she's just sad about being useless. When a rainbow appears in the sky, they swear Komi doesn't give a crap about nature because she thinks she's superior, but the boy explains she's just terrified of joining the crowd. The level of insanity reaches a point where Komi approaches them for a confrontation, and while the idiots think they're going to get murdered, Tadano realizes she just wants to hang out, dragging everyone to a cafe. Far from there, the Lonely Virgins fan club gathers for their daily round of delusions of grandeur. One dreams of Onamine eating rice straight off his face, the other cries profusely imagining the slowpoke Otori as his comforting wife, and the third creates a feudal epic where Komi draws a sword and threatens to slit everyone's throat. Before the mass hallucination spirals out of control, Komi herself walks into the room, making the boys abort the mission in a panic.
I will eliminate all of you.
Actually, in the end.
At lunchtime, the delinquent-faced brute Katai decides he needs to get closer to Tadano, following Komi's communication example. The blonde guy gets so nervous, he pulls the "here comes the airplane" move, trying to shove his juicy meatball straight into Tadano's mouth. The boy swallows the meatball out of pure pity, while Komi watches everything from behind a pillar, trembling with jealousy. When Katai forcefully grabs Tadano's arm, Komi is absolutely sure she is witnessing the birth of an intense homoerotic romance. Her stomach growls, giving away her hiding spot, and the girl ends up joining the school's newest throuple. To wrap up winter break with a bang, Komi suffers a panic attack while buying roasted sweet potatoes on the street and returns home with 5 of them clogging up her arms. Tadano is having an existential crisis, realizing he wants to get with Komi, decides to go for a late-night bike ride, while his sister is absolutely certain he went to buy porn mags, and ends up bumping into the girl on the street. He gets a hot potato as a gift, gathers up his courage and asks her out, leaving both of them as red as tomatoes in the middle of the freezing cold. Christmas has arrived, and our anti-social protagonist is rotting of boredom in her room until she finds out Najimi has organized a last-minute surprise party. In absolute panic to find a decent gift, she drags her brother Shusuke to the mall. This kid can speak perfectly fine, but he's so focused on maintaining his edgy lone wolf aura that he refuses to open his mouth, ending up physically forced by his sister to interact with the cashier and buy a ridiculous pink sweater so she wouldn't have to talk. The horde of simps invades the Komi family household shouting happy birthday, handing her a black plush cat so gigantic that it makes the girl bury her face in the stuffed animal in a state of shock, proving this is the first time in her life she's received something other than social trauma. When it's time to sit down, the background characters start a bloody cold war over the sacred spot next to the goddess, deciding the winner through rock, paper, scissors. Yamai the psychopath wins the divine right, but Komi simply ignores social rules and sits on the floor right next to Tadano, making Yamai foam at the mouth with sheer hatred before Najimi jumps onto his lap and completely ruins the sexual tension of the moment. They decide to play the king's game, turning the living room into a freak show. Yamai blatantly cheats to get Komi's number. Najimi forces the girl to wear a super tight Mistress Claus outfit to the absolute delight of the drooling idiots present, and Agari begs to be treated like a mangy dog in the middle of the room. Komi's mom bursts through the door wanting attention and accidentally orders number 4 to kiss number 9. With no way out, Tadano gives a tender kiss on the cheek of the wannabe ninja Shinobino, who surprisingly enjoys the sensation, leaving Komi huffing with jealousy over this new forbidden bromance. The narrative flashes back in time to show Tadano finding out about the birthday and deploying Najimi to rally the troops at the mall. The gift hunt is an absolute disaster where Yamai wraps herself in wrapping paper to offer herself as a human sacrifice. Agari tries to give a dog training kit reflecting her own bizarre fetishes, and Tadano is forced to veto absolutely everything. Using the only functioning brain in the group, he suggests they chip in to buy the giant cat, saving Komi from being buried under questionable garbage. The party ends with the bunch of misfits thinking she hated the surprise, but a massive text message from the girl thanking them for everything melts the hearts of this needy gang, ensuring the asylum will gather again next year. The supreme goddess of social anxiety wakes up to a face full of snow, only to look out the window and see her number 1 doormat sleeping standing up in the front yard. Najimi, fueled by the energy of someone who snorted 3 kilos of sugar at 3 a.m., dragged poor Tadano out into the freezing cold. They start playing in the snow, and Tadano builds a pathetic little snowman that Komi thinks is the cutest thing in the world. Najimi decides to stroke everyone's ego and leads the construction of a giant snowman, but terrifies the goddess by giving it a bizarrely realistic snow hand. While Komi's mom bribes the two with hot soup inside, our antisocial protagonist builds her own tiny snowman and places it right next to Tadano's, proving that, at least in the snow, they have some chemistry. The piece is shattered when a deadly snowball fight is declared. It's the high schoolers against a squad of elementary school brats, and the rule is simple: if you get hit, you die. Komi gets tossed onto the kids' team, but she's so paralyzed, she's practically dead weight. Tadano and Agari prove they have the motor skills of a potato and are absolutely useless. When the brat's leader demands that Komi attack, she's terrified of hurting someone and just pathetically drops the snowball on the ground. After a massacre where almost everyone drops dead, Komi is the last one standing. Najimi and the hyper-competitive Yada No prepare for the execution, but Yamai, acting like the raging simp psychopath she always is, commits friendly fire and eliminates them both just to protect her goddess. Yamai expects to be rewarded for her sacrifice by offering up her own face, but Komi returns the favor by launching a cold, dry snowball right in the middle of her forehead. Victory for the brats, and Komi gains 4 new friends through sheer silent intimidation. The year is wrapping up, and the Komi family goes to visit Grandma Yuiko, who gives off major Yakuza final boss energy. Komi decides to playfully terrorize her little cousin Akira, and then they decide to play Hanafuda. Grandma joins the circle out for blood, betting real money, and mercilessly cleans poor Akira out, taking almost 4,000 yen from the kid, who starts bawling. To save her cousin's skin, Komi joins the old lady's gambling ring, and despite having the tactical knowledge of a doorknob, she wins the game on pure dumb luck, shocking everyone. At the New Year's shrine visit, Komi is shoved into a shrine maiden cosplay and bumps into Inaka, the traumatized country bumpkin. Inaka freaks out, thinking her rural accent is going to be exposed to the whole world, and pretends to be someone else, but Komi is so deep in her own social phobia that she can't even process what's happening. When a customer shows up and Komi freezes like Windows 95, Inaka throws her disguise in the trash and hands over a notepad to save the goddess from a nervous breakdown, earning her respect and ending the day with a thank you that almost makes the country girl melt. The official doormat wakes up in the middle of the afternoon with a smushed face after pulling an all-nighter playing video games. Najimi, who magically spawned in his house and crashed there, decides it's time to summon the whole squad for the the first shrine visit of the year. The chaos on the phone calls reaches absurd levels. Najimi calls Yamai in Hawaii just to tell her Komi is at the shrine, causing the psychopath to have an aneurysm of rage on the other side of the world. Then they ruin Nakanaka's gacha event at the last second, nearly assassinate Agari by making her choke on a rice ball, and shatter Yatano's concentration in the middle of a badminton game. Seeing the diplomatic disaster unfolding, Tadano takes over the phone. He calls Onamine and hears her beating up her little brother in the background, wakes up the slow-paced Otori, who had been hypnotized by a pixel fireplace since Christmas, and makes the buff Ka-Tai sweat cold with excitement. When Komi finally lets them know she's coming back from the countryside to meet up with the gang, Najimi and Tadano's sister start tormenting the poor guy, hinting at an obvious romance that these two clueless mollusks still refuse to admit. At the shrine, the crowd races ahead like savages, leaving the goddess and her squire alone in the back. They exchange tense New Year's greetings, and Komi hits the jackpot on her fortune slip, hiding it from him in embarrassment like a generic shoujo heroine. Days later, Ka-Tai plans an extremely manly and totally not suspicious hangout with Tadano at the ice skating rink. But Tadano ruins the bromance vibe by bringing Komi along. The blonde meathead and the goddess spend the entire trip shivering in fear of each other. Ka-Tai tries to play the alpha male on the ice, but slips like a bag of garbage because he's never skated in his life. And surprise, Komi also has no clue how to stand up on those things. Tadano steps up as the instructor and goes to teach Komi, but they end up bumping into each other awkwardly and holding hands, blushing like two tomatoes.
Holding the wall. Oh, go a bit lower. Use your... So dumb!
Ka-Tai sees the scene and comes to the most idiotic conclusion possible, thinking that holding hands is a secret friendship training technique. He tries to do the same, falls backward, and gets caught by Tadano in a scene romantic enough to leave Komi rotting with jealousy, thinking she just lost her man to the group's musclehead. To make our useless protagonist's life even worse, he catches a brutal fever while his family escapes to the hot springs. He tries to call Najimi to beg for food, but his melted brain dials Komi instead. A little while later, the supreme goddess herself breaks into his room carrying hot tea and porridge. In a burst of audacity, she tries to feed him her white, creamy spoon, making little airplane noises. A humiliation Tadano immediately rejects before eating on his own and passing out again. Left alone in the room with the sleeping boy, Komi can't resist and reaches out to finally cop a feel of the guy's flesh, trying to hold his hand. But right as contact is about to happen, Najimi kicks the door down and storms in like a hurricane, making Komi shake her head in denial so fast she almost snaps her own neck. In the end, Tadano's sister comes home, sniffs the goddess's scent in the air, and correctly concludes that her virgin brother finally brought a female to the nest. Our goddess of silence spends the entire night sweating cold and having micro heart attacks just remembering she committed the cardinal sin of holding our generic protagonist's unprotected hand. She freaks out thinking Najimi saw the dirty deed, and decides to write an apology letter worthy of a defense attorney, claiming she was merely checking the boy's pulse. But when she tries to slip the letter into his school locker, that androgynous being of chaos spawns from the shadows, blatantly steals the paper, and goes running down the hallway screaming to the four winds that it's a love letter. Meanwhile, Tadano's brain is melting with insecurity. He thinks Komi's visit to his house was just the fever dream of a lonely schizophrenic, just like you when you think someone smiled in your direction. When he gathers the courage to ask Komi what she did after taking care of him, the girl thinks he's talking about the illicit hand-touching, goes into a total panic, and flees to the bathroom with the speed of a Kenyan marathon runner. And to completely destroy the poor guy's sanity, Najimi tells him Komi was just taking his pulse, leaving the kid with the cognitive capacity of a brick. Suddenly, the narrative decides to give a useless lesson on Greek mythology just to introduce Naruse, a gel-haired weirdo with headphones who thinks he's the reincarnation of divine beauty. He is absolutely certain that everyone around him is drooling over him, when in reality, the entire class has formed a human barricade fueled by elbows and pure hatred to stop him from getting anywhere near Komi. After being humiliated and receiving death threats from the psychopath Yamai, the narcissist goes to cry a river in the bathroom, but on the way, he drops a handkerchief. Komi, being the polite person she is, returns the piece of cloth, and Naruse's peanut brain automatically translates this basic human decency as a desperate marriage proposal. The next day, he shoves his phone in Komi's face, expecting her to type in her number. Since the girl only suddenly pokes the device and runs away in a panic without understanding anything, the weirdo decides to just get Tadano's number instead. He spends the whole night sending shirtless selfies to our protagonist, guaranteeing the poor guy will have nightmares for the rest of the week. The school then announces the classic mandatory field trip to Kyoto, and Komi confesses to Tadano that her past is more traumatizing than a soap opera finale. Back in middle school, she was treated like untouchable radioactive waste and was miserably left out when it came to forming groups, getting dragged along by people who just ignored her. Tadano, activating his ultimate protective simp mode, promises that if she gets left out again, the two of them will ditch the trip and hang out on their own. Her heart melts at the proposal, but the next day, the entire class tries to kidnap the girl for their own groups. That is, until the teacher, proving he hates everyone's happiness, announces that the cliques will be decided through a brutal lottery.
So, I knew this would happen, so we're choosing the groups by lottery.
Fate proves it has an incredibly sadistic sense of humor when the trip groups are drawn. Tadano gets stuck in the absolute worst combination possible with the anxious meathead Katai and the insufferable narcissist Naruse. Komi, on the other hand, lands in a group with Sasaki and Kato, two background characters so painfully generic they could be NPCs from a PlayStation 2 game with the charisma of a bowl of unsweetened oatmeal. The two accept their absolute peasant status and make a silent pact to ensure Goddess Komi has the best trip of her life, even if they have to crawl on the asphalt to make it happen. Arriving in Kyoto, we meet the tour guide Ryoko, a corporate world casualty who is on the verge of an irreversible mental breakdown dealing with this psychiatric ward of a classroom. She desperately tries to explain the complex history of the temples, but Najimi keeps bothering the woman by asking if she has a boyfriend. The whole class only cares about worshipping Komi's breathing. Naruse thinks random tourists want to take pictures of his plastic face, and Nakanaka buys a wooden sword and channels the spirit of a diseased samurai. The guide is about to quit her job, tear up her degree, and jump off a bridge until she sees Tadano and Komi actually paying attention to the architectural nonsense she's spouting. This magically restores the salaried worker's will to live. During the tour, Tadano apologizes for being an annoying nerd talking about the old wooden structures, and Komi writes in her notebook that she likes it. But the sentence comes out with such a blatant "I like you" undertone that the mood instantly heats up, and the tour guide stands in the background rooting for them to just get married already and stop stalling. That night at the hotel, the unhinged Yamai breaks the fourth wall to reveal her creepy plan for the hot springs, except Agari is having a panic attack in the locker room because she was heavily bullied in the past. Onemine hands the crying girl a towel to console her, but when Agari takes off her clothes, she reveals a chest so huge that even Onemine blurts out meatballs. In the boiling water, Yamai shamelessly begs to squeeze Komi's soft flesh and gets a no drier and deadlier than the Sahara Desert. Meanwhile, in the boys' room, the class delinquents are terrified, thinking Katai is going to kill everyone. But in the hot springs, Naruse compliments the meathead's sweaty muscles, lends him some moisturizing cream, and suggests a shirtless photo shoot. Tadano becomes the official photographer of this heavy, cringeworthy bromance. When Komi casually walks past the hallway and sees the camera flashes illuminating a bunch of sweaty dudes striking poses and flexing their glutes, she becomes absolutely certain they play for the other team. Back in the girls' room, Najimi instigates a savage pillow fight, promising the divine right to sleep next to Komi as the prize for the last survivor. Komi throws herself into the brawl with a genuine smile on her face, and when everyone passes out from exhaustion after beating each other with feathers, she stays awake in the dark, completely euphoric to finally have a school trip where she doesn't have to hide in the bathroom. On the second day of the school trip, the students get a free pass to do whatever they want, which means our mute, anxious goddesses group is about to embark on a tourist itinerary designed by a productivity psychopath. Kato reveals she's put together a schedule capable of crossing the Kansai region faster than you run from your responsibilities. They raid the generic Universal Studios with VIP passes, eat overpriced snacks, and go on rides while Kato reveals her bizarre obsession with becoming a shogi champion. Meanwhile, Sasaki and Komi confess that their specialty is doing absolutely nothing with their lives. The marathon of despair continues with Kato swallowing boiling takoyaki for breakfast like she doesn't have an esophagus, and then she drags the two of them to feed deer at the Todaiji temple, where Komi almost adopts one of the beasts. They almost miss their train back, making Sasaki complain about the overplanning, and Kato blames Sasaki's sluggishness for not eating her takoyaki on the go. A funeral-like atmosphere sets in, but Komi saves the day by showing them trip photos on her phone, curing the group's depression on the spot. The trio runs like they owe money to the mob to a movie theme park where Komi is dressed up as a geisha and attracts a crowd of drooling simps. But as soon as Sasaki goes to empty her bladder, actors dressed as ninjas decide it's a great idea to attack the most anxious girl in the world. While Komi almost has a heart attack, a masked figure wielding yo-yos appears out of nowhere, pulls off professional tricks that humiliate the actors, and vanishes into the darkness. Back at the hotel, Kato goes into full Sherlock Holmes mode and accuses Sasaki of being the closeted yo-yo master. A purse-tugging catfight breaks out until Komi writes that she wanted to thank her yo-yo hero, completely oblivious to the fact that the ninjas were just street theater. Humiliated for ruining the performance, Sasaki locks herself in the bathroom, has a sad flashback of boys laughing at her yo-yoing, and decides she's no longer going to take crap from any guy. She puts on her demon mask and busts out her tricks right in their faces, securing her future as a world champion. At bedtime, the three kick off the classic girl talk interrogation about boys. Sasaki says she just wants to play Cupid, Kato confesses she wants Katai's sweaty muscles, and Komi reveals she doesn't have enough brain power to understand what having a crush actually means. After Kato explains the symptoms like a doctor diagnosing the flu, Komi turns beet red and writes the initial H in her notebook. The two freak out with joy upon realizing the target is our useless, bland protagonist. On the train ride back, Sasaki dons her cape as the villain of love, tricks Tadano with a ninja story to make him switch seats, tosses Kato next to Katai, and forces the boy to sit next to Komi, who has passed out from exhaustion. Her head drops straight onto his shoulder, leaving the kid paralyzed. When she wakes up, the romantic tension in the air is instantly killed when Komi decides to ask why Tadano took photos of shirtless guys, proving he has a lot of explaining to do. Sasaki and Kato join the friendship list, and the trip wraps up with 21 victims in the cult of Komi. Back to the daily grind. The girls suffer from collective social amnesia and can't even look each other in the face without having an anxiety stroke, thinking their friendship was left behind in Kyoto. While Komi watches the rest of the class forming unlikely cliques, our protagonist notices her panic and gives her a literal push on the back. Empowered by the power of love and desperation, Komi walks up to Kato, drops a good morning, and Sasaki quickly joins in, while Tadano stays in the corner dying of embarrassment for having touched the school goddess. Valentine's Day is coming up, so Onamine invites Komi and the slow-paced Otori to make sweets at her house, crushing Tadano's intentions of trying to infiltrate the girls-only event. At Onamine's house, Komi is introduced to her younger siblings, who stare at her in terror before slapping her on the butt and running away, leaving our protagonist thoroughly humiliated by kids who are barely learning to read. While baking the cake, Komi shows off her god-tier batter whisking skills and ends up winning the brats over. They ask why she's mute, try to pull words out of her mouth, and ultimately tell her she has a pretty voice, making Komi promise she'll try to speak more.
Oh, you've got a really pretty voice. You should talk a lot more, you know? Yeah, you should.
They devour the whole cake. The kids are added to the friendship list, bringing the count to 24, and Komi goes back home to mass-produce enough chocolate to feed a small army. The great capitalist holiday dawns. Komi tries to drop her romantic chocolates into Tadano's locker, but panics and bolts when he shows up. The poor protagonist digs through his things with the desperate hope of a stray dog, but finds absolutely nothing. While Tadano spirals into depression, Komi hands out sweets to the class. Najimi brags about receiving more than they gave, and Yamai hands Komi a bizarre chocolate shaped like her own head for her to devour, fainting from pure emotion right after receiving candy in return. Amidst the chaos, the muscular giant Katai decides to give Tadano some chocolates after being manipulated into it. And when the protagonist promises to return the favor next month, Katai realizes the heavy romantic tension he just created. Komi watches the scene dead inside from sadness for not having given him hers, convinced she just lost her boy to a literal bromance. After checking his locker again and finding nothing but a dirty rock, Tadano goes home and collapses on the floor, his self-esteem shattered. His sister and mother give him pity chocolates, and Hitomi almost dies laughing when she finds out his only real gift came from another guy. But during dinner, his sister spots a creepy silhouette outside and kicks Tadano out of the house with the excuse of going to buy ice cream. He bumps into Komi, the two head to a deserted park, and the girl hands him some bureaucratic student council paperwork, breaking his heart just a little bit more. more. When she's about to flee on the train and Tadano has already accepted his life as a reject, Komi summons all her courage, screams his name at the station, and shoves the chocolates into the kid's hands using her actual voice. She tries to lie and say they're just friendship gifts, but when Tadano admits he had almost given up on getting anything from her, Komi blushes and blurts out that those were the best sweets she could possibly make, practically rubbing her love confession in his face. Unable to handle her own boldness, she runs off into the night, leaving our dense protagonist processing the information in the dark. Our socially anxious goddess decides her life is over and tries to turn into a blanket burrito forever, completely mortified after practically confessing her love to our generic protagonist on Valentine's Day. But her mom has no time for teenage drama and drags the girl out of bed with the lethal threat of losing her perfect school attendance. As soon as she steps foot in school, the Komi fan club starts worshipping her chocolates. Agari gives a disturbingly detailed gastronomic review, while Yadano freaks out with jealousy because Komi's candy was bigger than hers. But the true terror strikes when Komi sees Tadano in the classroom. She sits next to him, forcing a grimace so bizarre to hide her embarrassment that she looks like she's being exorcised. Tadano, being the idiot he is, decides to break the ice by thanking her for the chocolate, which works so well that Komi simply panics and runs out of the room like Sonic. Later on, the resident psychopath Yamai spots a run in Komi's tights, and her primate brain starts calculating endless perverted possibilities. She lures Komi to the bathroom, offering her a new pair, but in a move of pure anime tier betrayal, she grabs Komi's used tights and wears them over her own head like a foot fetishist bank robber. Komi chases the lunatic through the hallways in a fit of rage. Tadano actually considers playing the hero, but his eyes glue themselves to Komi's bare legs and his brain melts from horrors, turning him into a useless statue. Meanwhile, we meet Onigashi Ma, a seemingly adorable girl who has the emotional stability of a rabid chihuahua. Her monster meter goes through the roof over any little piece of crap, from catching a red light to dealing with tangled earphones. Yamai warns Tadano that trying to calm the girl down is suicide and that she only relaxes by eating, sleeping, or beating the crap out of baseballs. When Onigashi Ma spills juice on her shoulder, she hits Super Saiyan levels of rage in the bathroom. But our goddess Komi notices the tragedy of the tangled earphones, grabs the wire, and unties the knots with a surgeon's precision. The miracle is so absolute that Onigashima bursts into tears and drags everyone to the batting cages, where she hits a home run straight out of Earth's orbit. In another corner of the school, Amami Sato shows off her talent for being the biggest doormat in the history of mankind. The girl would agree to donate her mother's panties or give away 100,000 yen if someone asked, because saying no is physically impossible for her. When she tries to carry a stack of papers heavier than herself just to spare Tadano the trouble, Komi finally steps in. Our goddess grabs some of the papers and forces the girl to beg for help. The reality check makes Sato ask Komi to help clean the classroom, creating a new morning ritual for the whole group. The day ends with a shogi puzzle that triggers the first little lovers' quarrel between Komi and Tadano as the two stubborn dorks disagree on a move. Najimi sniffs out the romantic tension from miles away, leaving them both blushing. The next day, when the truth comes out and proves Komi was right, she shoots Tadano the ultimate look of mockery, and the useless simp can't help but find it the cutest thing in the universe. The useless Tadano sits in his room frying his two remaining brain cells trying to decide what to get Komi for White Day. He dives into the depths of Google and discovers that giving candy means love, while giving marshmallows means pure hatred. His sister enters the room and senses his panic, so Tadano uses the lame excuse that the gift is for Katai. Itomi plays along with his delusion just to drag the truth out of him, forces him to admit his feelings, and drags the useless guy to the mall to buy a decent gift, all while their mom eavesdrops at the door, thinking her son is turning into a gym rat and switching teams. Since White Day falls on a Saturday, Friday officially descends into chaos at school. The background characters try to give Komi gifts, but they're crushed by Yamai, who hands her a candy sculpture shaped like her own body, proving there are absolutely no limits to her psychopathy. Katai tries to return Komi's favors, but his whey protein-filled brain decides the ideal gift is a bodybuilding book, leaving our protagonist terrified. Tadano finally tries to ask Komi out, but since he's an absolute coward afraid of Friday the 13th, he chokes mid-sentence and ends up inviting Katai to dinner instead. Komi is left completely destroyed on the inside, while the guys go stuff their faces with teriyaki beef. since he completely blew it in the morning. Tadano is forced to go to Komi's house at night. He spends minutes in a cold sweat on the sidewalk looking like a criminal before ringing the doorbell. Komi's brother answers and slams the door in his face, but her mom busts the door open and intimidates Tadano into sitting in the girl's room to wait. The real terror begins when Komi's dad enters in dead silence, sits down in front of him, and drinks the tea. Tadano breaks under the pressure and starts spilling all his secrets. Right at the exact moment Komi walks into the room, nearly has a heart attack, and kicks her dad out. The atmosphere becomes so unbearably awkward that Tadano ends up drinking from the very same teacup her dad just drank from. Finally, he hands over hand cream and the candy that says between the lines that he likes her. Right after, he runs away through the door of cowardice, leaving Komi smiling as she rubs the scented cream on her hands. On the last day of school, the class decides to turn cleaning the room into an underground desk eraser flicking tournament. What starts as a little game turns into a high-stakes sports anime. Katai discovers his inner strength just because Tadano was watching him, and Najimi tries to cheat with a spring only to end up breaking their own finger like a moron. Komi summons her divine precision, delivers the perfect flick, and wins the championship like an absolute boss. But not even the glory of the eraser can hide her depression. While watching the rain in the late afternoon, Komi finally speaks up, saying she's sad because they'll be in separate classes next year. Tadano, being the idiot he is incapable of taking romantic hints and thinks she's talking about the whole group of weirdos, so he gives a cheap motivational speech that incredibly works. Weeks later, the new school year begins. Komi arrives at school ready for social warfare, bumps into Tadano at the lockers, turns red as a tomato, and confesses that she can't wait for another year of putting up with our airheaded protagonist.